Hi everyone, it's Sonia McDonald here, and I'm the founder and CEO of Leadership HQ McDonald Inc. And also, you know how passionate I am about kind, courageous, outstanding leadership. And I have been interviewing and speaking to incredible leaders across the globe now for many years here on the Leadership Lounge. And I have the great honor and privilege of speaking to Alan Heyward, who is the CEO of OCTANNER. And they're also now partners, incredible partners in our outstanding Leadership Awards and Courage Conference, which is taking the globe by storm. And I've been dealing with their team for many months now, and I'd have to say they're all incredible leaders. I've been super impressed with the work and also the research they do. So welcome to the Leadership Lounge, Alan.
Thank you, Sonia. Great to be here. And I think we should start with a point of clarity in case the actual CEO of OCTANNER is listening. So I'm the Managing Director for Asia Pacific. We do have a CEO of OCTANNER Group based in our head office in Salt Lake City. So I haven't pushed him out just yet.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
So I actually did reach out. I did reach out to your CEO over there just to connect with him, and he sounds pretty amazing too.
Absolutely.
Sorry everybody. He's the managing director.
Okay.
Well, I was trying to.
Unless I've got a promotion I don't know about yet.
Well, we didn't want to say anything. We didn't want to say anything just yet. But anyway, it's out of the bag
between
now.
us. We'll keep it between us.
So tell me, you and I have been talking a bit about particularly outstanding leadership with a focus on courageous leadership. Tell me a little bit about your journey, your story. What does courage and leadership mean to you?
So my story is I've been a leader of people for many years, probably more years than I'd like to remember. But I think it's only in more recent times that I've really understood what the role of a leader was. You spend a lot of time managing people, and I think, and we called people managers more than leaders back in sort of earlier days. When I think about what a leader is, for me, and particularly courageous leaders, it's a leader that advocates for their people, is invested in development. But I think the courageous piece really comes out with knowing when to stand up, but also knowing when to sit down. And that was probably a mistake I made quite early in my leadership sort of journey. Was you felt like you needed to know everything, and you needed to be the expert, and you needed to make all decisions, and you needed to fight every battle. As I've got more experience and in sort of the last decade or so, it's really been more about picking your battles, knowing the ones that are worth fighting, and having the courage to sit down and actually not let people down, but let people know that you literally cannot fight every battle that there is to fight. So I think courage comes out in a lot of different ways. It's the battles you fight and the ones you don't fight. It's also having belief in your goals and staying true to your goals, and when in the face of adversity, is continuing to drive through towards those goals.
I love that. It's really interesting. I see what you're saying around, I think a lot of people, especially when they get into that leadership role per se, they do think it is about they need to make all the decisions. They need to be the one kind of standing up, stepping up all the time, when having kind of that courage to go, I don't have all the answers. That kind of vulnerability is, I think, you think as a leader that you've got to be kind of at the front, storming ahead, when it's kind of like, well, it's okay to step back and let others kind of step up as well, and you sit down and take a step back. And I think that's important to know and learn. Absolutely.
And if we think about one of our roles as leaders is to develop people. It's hard for people to develop if you're leading, if they're right behind you all the way. You've got to let people get out there and have a go and make mistakes and learn for themselves, because you can only mentor so much, you can only talk so much. At the end of the day, you've got to get out there and do it.
Yeah, and I know when I first connected with you, that one thing that really stood out to me, and I don't even know if you remember the conversation, you probably do, but in terms of when we were talking, the one thing that really stood out when I was talking to you is that you really lifted and advocated for people in your team. Like you were very around, oh, I've got an exceptional HR director and a head of marketing. Like you were so good at kind of lifting up others, and I could tell that you were this leader that understood the power of having great leaders, and that, you know what I mean, and not being the smartest person in the room. You know, that sort of philosophy really stood out in terms of when I first spoke with you.
Yeah, I remember that conversation, and it's a conversation I have frequently about the quality of not just the leaders in the business, but everybody in the business, because businesses are about people. And I wish I knew that when I started my leadership journey. You make some mistakes along the way, and because you don't necessarily get the tools you need to be a good leader when you become a leader. And I mean, that's not everybody talks about that, and we still do very little about it to equip new leaders to be leaders as opposed to managers. So I've made a really conscious effort to make sure I do what I can to get out of the way of the experts that actually know what they're doing.
So I've got a few comments here. Hank's gone, well done, guys. Keep it up. Sherry's gone, so special. I'd love to work with you. So
we might have an open role. So Sherry, reach out.
Reach out.
Not sure what you do, but
hand on heart, they are amazing to work with, because actually this is a really good lead-in moment. And I know, we spoke about today's live and how passionate you are about talking about leadership. Is OCTANNER, here's Sherry going, hey, I'd love to work with you. Tell me a little bit about you, because I know that we spoke about the importance of reward recognition, especially during COVID and this pandemic, around the power of keeping people engaged. But the other thing I love about the work that you do is you're really great with your research, and there's some, I'm going to post some stuff around some of their great global culture reports, like such great data research and things. Tell me a little bit about OCTANNER.
Okay. We're about a 95-year-old startup. Is sort of the way we like to talk about ourselves. We've been around for a long time, and we've always been in the same space. So we're a workplace culture, HR technology, and consulting business. So we have SaaS technology, we have a range of consulting services, and as you talked about, Sonia, we invest a lot of money in research. We have an institute that, as you said, we have our annual Global Culture Report, which is a culmination of that research. And the most recent one, the 2022 report, is based on about 40,000 interviews, some online, some face-to-face interviews, to gather the perceptions of people, of employees, and how they feel about their workplace culture. So what do? We work with companies to help them create environments within their workplace that can help, that allows people to produce great work, to help people. Our purpose is to help people thrive at work, and that's the way we think about our own people. It's the way we think about the people of our clients. But something we talk about often is we do this research, we make a lot of it available without. You don't need to be a client to get access to a global culture report and so on. So we invest a lot in helping people thrive at work wherever they are, and that could include clients of our competitors and so on. So we have, as I said, we have the tech, we have the consulting, and we have the research and the analysis and the insights behind it to help organisations get a head start on creating these work environments that are positive, engaging, and where great work can happen.
So how did you find, as an organisation that is all about helping people thrive? Obviously, you and I are very passionate about culture, so we believe, obviously, that believe that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So culture Absolutely. Kind of underpins everything. But how did you find, in terms of this pandemic, like, how did you find it impacted people's ability to help people or organizations keep people thriving during this time? I mean, what did you find for yourself at OCTANNER?
Yeah. So it is good to be at a company like OCTANNER, so you can see how we reacted to the pandemic, as well as how our clients reacted to the pandemic. So, and that it's fair to say the way OCTANNER reacted was we circled the wagons. Everything was about people first. And OCTANNER is generally about people first in terms of our own people. They're quite a generous company, but and in terms of benefits and so on. But the care that you feel through the business is immense. And so I'd say through the pandemic, that got dialed up very quickly. And examples like for the first year of the pandemic, our executive team communicated out to a global employee base of about 1,800 people. Every day, every working day of the pandemic for the first year, we got an update, a check-in, what was happening. And I mean, that takes work. That takes commitment to do that. And then it softened a little bit as we went on, and there's regular check-ins. But what we did do, which sort of looking at our external client base as well, was we really leaned into recognition as a way to, as everybody's sitting at home, to maintain connection, so that our employees were feeling that they retain connection with their people and the company and the purpose of what we're here for, but also I guess they felt they weren't feeling isolated because they had those connections happening, and they felt appreciated for what they were doing. So they were slogging away at home on the dining room table or in the bedroom or whatever they were doing, and they were they were feeling, people actually appreciate what I'm doing, even though I'm not sitting next to them every day. And that's what a lot of our clients did. It's fair to say not all companies did that. A range of companies around the world would have pulled back on, they would have dove into, we need to make sure people are well mentally, but recognition might have fallen away. And I think there's examples where that they will pay the price for that going forward, I think, because they've lost some connection with people through the pandemic times.
It was interesting. That was definitely something that in the past nearly 2 years that this has been, I mean, it's been going a lot longer than many of us expected, to be honest, is that we saw the best and worst of leaders and leadership during this time. And I think, as you just mentioned there, the key was that connection piece, and that many people I was talking felt very disconnected because leaders in roles were unable to engage, reward, lead remotely or virtually. And I think that connection piece, it sounds like that was such a key, particularly, which I loved in terms of, and I just put the link in the feed here if everyone wants to download the white paper, is that I know you talked about the importance of, I'm a big one for psychological needs and psychological safety. Mm-hmm. And I know in your recent global culture report, you talked about the importance of autonomy, connection, and mastery, which I'm a big fan of as well. So if anyone wants to read that, please have a look at that.
Yeah, please do.
What stood out for you when you actually, when you thought about connection? How did you lead that? Like, how did you find personally as a leader you were able to truly lead connection at OCTANNER here in Australia? Yeah.
So it's something I thought a lot about, and as you said right at the start, we didn't expect it to last anywhere near as long as it has. I remember when we went into lockdown mid-March 2020, and pretty quickly we were talking about a return in July time, or June, and maybe we'll wait till after the school holidays and we'll return in July. So the urgency wasn't necessarily there right up front, but pretty quickly we worked out this thing was going to get away from us globally. So a couple of things that I did was, so across Asia Pacific, we're about 55 people with a team in Singapore and a team in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So I had sort of a schedule of, I reached out to every person in our region to have a one-on-one conversation with them, and I still do it. I did some yesterday, so I've got this sort of cycle going that I want to touch base with everybody that on a one-to-one basis outside of our town halls and our team meetings and things like that, just to say, hi, how you going? How you coping? What can we do for you? Just to talk about stuff, the new dog that we bought, just to, I guess, lighten the mood a little bit, but also just to keep that connection. And there's actually people that, I hate to say it, but I've probably spoken to more because of those direct one-on-one connections that I have spoken to more whilst we've been in lockdown and through the pandemic than I would if we were in the office, because just the roles we play. So I've, that's something I did, and that's something that I advocated. I also organised, to the degree that we could, organised to catch up with people for walking meetings. So none of this is groundbreaking stuff. It's things that other people were doing, and I'd love to claim credit, but just things that made sense. Is go for a walk for an hour, talk about the things you want to talk about, but also just get some face time and be able to walk, get a bit of exercise. And so just things like that are not about, they're not about KPIs, they're not actually about the work, they're about the person. And I've probably, this topic of leadership, I've probably learned more about myself as a leader over the last 2 years than I probably had in the 20 years before that, to be honest. Like, just in terms of what actually matters to me. And those who work with me will know that I'm quite serious about my work and serious about being successful and achieving. But the last 2 years have really driven home what are the real priorities for me. Not that I didn't care about people before, because I absolutely did, but this really shone a light on it, what was most important for me as a leader.
We're getting some great comments here around So True. People are really loving what you're talking about, and I love the walking and the talking, because even from a psychological perspective, right, we feel when we're walking with someone, it's much more conducive to connection, because it's kind of like I'm not staring at you and talking, we're walking along side by side, and there's that safety feeling. But also, this is like, our brain's a connection machine, right? We're a social organ. So this is why connection is key. And so many leaders that we work with and speak to, and it's so great that you had the courage to go, gosh, I have to put my hand, I'll probably be talking to them more in the last 2 years than I did when, they were in the office. A lot of leaders don't know how to actually go, oh, okay, how do I do that? So I think anyone that's watching, go for a walk is one thing, but also put it in your, scheduling your calendar, like you making sure that you have those one-on-one conversations, not about just work, but connecting around what they care about, what motivates them. Someone's asked a question, but before we get into that, I wanted to talk about, and we talked about last week around this whole kind of Great Resignation talk that's happening at the moment. I have views on that. I saw a term on a poll last week that was quite interesting around the Great Reshuffle versus the Great Resignation. And I don't know that, again, there's some research around that, particularly around the future of leadership and things like that. I mean, what are your thoughts on this whole Great Resignation?
Oh, I'm not sure we've got a lot of. We've got 7 minutes. I'm not sure that's long enough, but I'll summarise for you. I've got a couple of conflicting views. Well, not conflicting, but a couple of views on it. First one is, I'm not going to pretend it's not real. Clearly, there is movement around the world, and people, for whatever reason, whether it be because of the pandemic, because of the lockdown, or just confluence of events, that people are looking around. my challenge is by labeling it the Great Resignation, I'm concerned that we make it a thing when it maybe doesn't need to be a thing.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's a fait accompli that, well, we're going to have all these resignations. Well, why do you have to? Our research, not just our research, but plenty of research before ours, has shown that positive modern leadership plays a role in actually retaining people. And in an environment where there's this great resignation going on, I don't see why that has to be any different, to be honest. I think I have a concern that there's too many organisations will feel like, well, it's going to happen, so is there much we can do about it, rather than accepting the outcome, as opposed to really leaning in and saying, okay, what are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
And the things you need to do about it are actually no different now than what they were 3 years ago. I think there's a stronger impetus to do something, but they're actually no different to what they were. It's modern leadership, leaders who care, leaders who develop people and mentor people, and so on.
I think that's I love what you've just said. I'm totally on board with everything you just said. I'm so aligned to that, because I think, and even in the poll, and it got a lot of conversation around it, and there was some interesting research in an article that came out of BBC that I tagged in it, was if you're feeling like, whoa, okay, it seems to be this kind of global thing that's happening around Great Resignation, and also I was concerned about putting seeds in people's head where it's like, well, if you, as an organization, if you feel as though what's going to happen if this is Great Resignation and movement happening, think about, all right, what do I need to do about my culture? Okay, what do I, maybe I need to start to think about, if I feel that there's going to be movement within my organization, now is the time to go, what can I do to retain these people? And it has to do with, it starts with your leadership, it starts with your culture. Think about, we're getting a lot of now people that are reaching out to us around cultural transformation, leadership development, because they want to go into 2022. And this is where I think OCTANNER could really assist so many organizations around the globe to start to really think about their culture. So, and it leads me into, Hank's asked a question on here on LinkedIn. He'd love to know what he thinks your definition of culture is.
There's so many definitions of culture. I'll give you my personal one. So not necessarily OCTANNER's official definition of culture, but the way I define culture is the way people in your organisation behave, or the way your organisations behave when people aren't watching. So it is that ingrained way that people act, they communicate, and their intent that they do when people aren't watching. That's what people are really like, when they don't need to act a certain way, but they do anyway. For me, that is what your culture is. There's many other ways to define it, but that's the way I would define what your culture is. Is them, or what do you do about it? Is that the way you want to be? If not, well, then you need to go about cultivating a different culture, and there's different ways you can do that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. I think it is all about behaviours and values, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're championing these outstanding leadership awards around the globe, is that we want to champion and showcase leaders and organisations who are very much around outstanding leadership, which is based on values and behaviours.
Yeah,
and that's how I believe that, and that everybody leads the culture as well. So I think that's really key. So no, thank you. People are sort of saying, around so true. There's comments around gratitude and things like that. So that's really great. Just a couple of questions around you and as a leader. And I know you, it takes courage to be where you are now, right? If you could go back to your younger self, if there's any advice you could give to people out there that are going, well, I would love to be an MD one day, right? And remember, I always say to people, leadership isn't a role or title. It is a behavior, it is an attitude, it is a choice. But there's, a lot of people I speak to go, how do I get to, I would love to be an MD one day, and what advice would you give people out there, or give our future or emerging leaders or our youth to think about to get to where you are today?
Yeah. Okay. And so there's a couple of areas there, and a couple of them I talked a bit about earlier. And so the first one's don't sweat the small stuff. Is we can get so caught up in the minutiae of detail that is actually not important. It took me far too long to learn that as a leader. It is get people around you, get a quality team around you that are experts in what they do, that make you look good, and that you can trust to just do what needs to be done to get on with it, and also take the time. That piece around not having to be an expert on everything. If you try to be an expert on everything, you will never be able to think strategically about anything, in my humble opinion. You will be so deep in the weeds that it's really hard to pull yourself out. Now, I'm sure there'll be people that will say, well, no, you can do both. My opinion, and maybe it's just the way I operate, but the more in the detail I get, the less strategically I can think. So I think and that relates to getting good people around you that you can trust, that know the detail, and you know how to ask the right questions as opposed to come up with the right answers. Those are sort of 3 or 4 components that I would give as advice.
I love that. I love the asking good questions, curiosity. I think I think sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, right? So if you get stuck in the detail, again, and I always say to people as well, if they're looking at, again, climbing that ladder or moving into being a leader where you can actually, I mean, I'm a big fan of servant leadership and lifting everyone else around you, is that you've got to build, that leadership bench strength around you and build people that are experts in their field, and you're there just to be able to lead them and help them grow. As you said, you can't be an expert in everything. And I find a lot of leaders today feel that they have to be, or they have to cross all the detail and have to know everything. And
it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And the one I did just think of that I should have added to that was you can't please everyone. You never will. So you need to be, as I said earlier, a courageous leader for me is the one that knows when to step up, but also when to sit down, and when to say to somebody, we're not going to do that. And sometimes you will be unpopular, and be prepared to be unpopular for the right reasons. That is something I would say to young leaders as well, is the quicker you get your head around that piece, I think the quicker you will become a good leader.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and I actually talk about that in a book that I recently published. Maybe a different way of saying it. Like, I like what you're saying, you can't please everyone, but I actually wrote in my book, Courage to be Unpopular, that sometimes you have to make those unpopular decisions, and that takes courage, right? Because you're not going to please everyone. To the point I wrote about Paul Scurra as my example in the book, and I sent him a copy of the book and said, sorry that you're in this chapter, but I wanted to highlight that obviously it took a lot of courage for him to lead, and he obviously he felt he had to be the best leader he could be during that time at Virgin. Sometimes we have to make choices or make decisions that not everyone's going to like, or is going to be unpopular. And I think that's a really good advice to give people as well, because leadership isn't about being liked, it's about being respected. And so a couple of people, someone's just made a comment, absolutely amazing. So I just thought I'd let you know that. But before we, thank you for that. Before we close off, is there anything else that you, Marion's gone, be brave to do the right thing. Spot on. So I'll just post those. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
So is there anything else that you'd love to close off with or add, that anyone out there that you feel that could, demonstrate, how wonderful and how great you are in that leadership space.
How wonderful and how great I am. Those who know me know that I'm not a spotlight person, so I don't think often about how wonderful and great I am. So maybe you should ask others about that. But in terms of closing, I guess I would just say to whoever, those that are listening, those aspiring leaders, and don't underestimate the influence and the impact that you have on people, not just professionally but personally.
Yeah.
And you don't have, you don't have to be friends. And I would say there's people I've worked with a long time. There's some I would say friends, some are colleagues, and that's fine in both cases. But even whether they're colleagues or they're friends or they're just people who you work with, you have an influence on their lives, and we need to take that seriously. And we're paid to be a leader, so lead, and get out there and get your priorities right. And the priorities aren't reports and paperwork and managing up. It's actually about the people that work for you and work with you, and influencing their lives in a positive way.
So true. I'm a great believer in the impact and ripple effect we can have, because leadership is such a great privilege and responsibility. And I know that you're incredibly humble, which humility is great, such a great aspect of leadership as well. So I know having this time with you on this live stream and on the Leadership Lounge, I'm really grateful for you taking the time, because as you said, you don't really like being in the limelight. However, we need to, this is why I'm so passionate about the live streams in the lounge with great leaders like yourself, is because I believe that we see way too much negativity in our media and in our feed around leadership, at times, particularly during this pandemic. And I think we need to see more inspirational people that we can listen to and watch, like people are today, and hear from people and you know what, Alan, you could have said something today like, Susie's just gone, thanks again for an insightful and brilliant interview. Sherry's gone, you both rock, I'll be in touch. So if you've been able to help someone on this that's been listening to this today, that's leadership, even if it's just one person, right? And
Absolutely.
we need to give people around the globe hope that there are leaders and organizations like yourself, Alan, and OCTANNER, that are out there making a difference, who really care, who really want to help people thrive. And this is why having you on here today is really important. And Sherry's just gone, now is the time to stand up. So thank you. I think we're going to have to trademark that, I think. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for your...
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so sorry again for calling you CEO. So
yeah, it's fine with me. It's actually felt quite good. I'm just not sure I'm there yet.
You never know. We might have put it out there. Okay.
You never know. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again. It was such an honor.
Great to chat. Bye bye.
You too. Bye. Bye.